Hi. Would wrestling and making every man have to wrestle as part of society get rid of all the simps? And I think it would. And it's just the idea of strong men make easy times make weak men make difficult times make strong men. And this cycle will continue unless something's done either through our culture or through our society where there has to be some type of fighting or combat or ritualized fighting and combat, not necessarily war, but you can get similar traits through sports and through wrestling and having to fight each other. And it's just making a person have to wrestle. I was telling someone about this, and like, no, people won't do that. I'm like people will say that's bad. Like, no, you just force them to wrestle, and if they don't want to learn how to wrestle, then you just continue to have them participate, and they will get the absolute living blank beat out, like just beat out of them. And I think it's kind of what the army does, where they'll keep breaking you down until at the core there's like this little spark, this little ember of the desire to be alive. And everyone alive has this, because if you didn't, I believe you just die. Like, if you lost completely the desire to live, you kind of just wither away to nothing. And I don't want to get too far into it, but I was listening to a cancer nurse talk about this, and she's like, yeah, you decide how long you want to fight for and really when you die. And a lot of her work was helping people accept that they were going to die and ready themselves, because depending on how hard you fight, it could get really, really ugly and put you in tremendous amounts of pain, versus in some situations accepting the terminal diagnosis. And if you notice my speech a little weird, my nose is completely stuffed. My whole sinuses are just overflowing, and it's very uncomfortable. But she was talking about this idea, and from that I formed the idea of, well, there's this spark within you, the desire to live, the desire for life, the desire to experience things. And I think if you break a person down to that, get rid of all their ego, get rid of their idea of, oh, I'm macho because of this, or like, I bet I could beat you. Like, that's the good thing about wrestling, is like, whenever my coach would have like two people bad mouthing each other, guess what, motherfuckers? You're wrestling each other in front of the whole team. We're all going to see who's actually the better one. And it just leads to this culture of like very little ego, but like just of brotherhood and people going through hard times together and coming out the other end stronger. And this is one of the things I think is good about the U.S. military service and everything else. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the idea of being forced to fight for corrupt politicians, but besides that, I think joining the army is a great thing to do, and it can help you find a purpose in a brotherhood that I think can only be found in really, really difficult situations. And not to say that the army is the same as wrestling, but I feel like I found a similar brotherhood among the people I wrestled with. And besides my actual brother, I've never actually come close to it. Anyways, my mind is a little flutter due to the cold, but yeah, if the whole world wrestled, and if we had some means for just beating the wimpiness out of people, and at least right now I'm listening to Sherlock Holmes on Audible. It's like 62 hours long, but there's this one section where they're traversing a canyon in the desert, and it's been days without water, and the character is just so determined to live that he's overcoming like all these obstacles, and like he's clinging on to life. And I'm just looking back on that, I'm like, I thought I was like tough shit for running 20 miles in a day. Like, I thought I was tough shit for like taking ice baths and like not eating for 5 days. Like, there's all these things we do in the modern world to call like tough. Like, and I'm just looking back on what life was back then, at least what the literary depiction of life was back then. And I'm like, wow. Like, I I wonder how I would exactly stack up to my great 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 grandfather. I wonder if he would see me and be like, "You little bitch." Like, I don't know, but like, I try to do challenging things to make myself stronger. I try to push myself and to always be like, kind of what David Goggins says, or it might be Huberman, but it's like, do one difficult thing a day. And the thing is, you just can't let your ego build up around that idea, because if you're watching this, I really like you, Chuck, and you're kind of a role model, but I show up to my BJJ gym, and there's like this 50-year-old guy there, and I'm talking to him. I'm like, oh yeah, I do ice baths. He's like, yeah, me too. I've been doing it for years. And I'm like, mm-hmm, motherfucker. Yeah, so I do long distance running. And I mean, he knows this himself, but he's not exactly the most lean of shape. But he looks at me, he's like, yeah, I do all your marathons too. I'm like, what? Like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, he lists off all these things that he's done. And I mean, I just thought I was like this little, like, compared to the people that I normally associate with, I'm on the tougher side for the things I do. Like, I'll do 20-minute ice baths. I'll go for 20-mile runs. I'll do half marathons on the weekends randomly. Like, I'll just be like, oh, it's too comfortable. I'll fast for 4 days. Like, I'll just do all this weird stuff to try like discover what I'm made of. And here's this guy who's like 52 years old, maybe older than that, but he is just who he is. Like, he doesn't even feel the need to talk about it. He doesn't have this like ego built around it. He's just like, yeah, I try to do one difficult thing a day. Like, on the weekends, I'll go for like 20-mile rucks with a 100-pound bag on. I'm like, I don't even do that. Like, and here, this guy who, like, my ego before I knew this was telling me, like, I'm the top shit, like, all this stuff. He does more of it. Like, he knows all this stuff, and he's just made it part of his life. And like, he's been doing it way before David Goggins was even a thing. Like, I'm just looking at it like, wow. Like, just, it really, really, really humbled me. And then listening to at least the literary depiction from Sherlock Holmes of life in the old what old west was like, I'm just like, wow, like, how easy we have it these days. And just in comparison, if strong men create easy times and we're in really really easy times, then we're producing some of the weakest men who've ever actually been on this earth. Like, I don't think people necessarily realize that this is the easiest, most abundant time the world has ever seen, which also means the people living in it are some of the weakest. And that doesn't go for everyone. There's definitely really tough people out there. And I'm not talking for people in other countries. And I realize my privileges being in the US. But within the US and the people I see living here, like, I'm just worried about the times coming after, because I see how weak they are. And if this is a wake-up call to you guys, because you notice that you haven't been pushing yourselves, or you haven't been performing to your highest abilities, I'd recommend reading David Goggins, listening to his stuff. Not at all would I ever recommend someone actually do the stuff he does, because it's horrible to not listen to your body and to be doing what he's doing. I bet he's going to have massive thyroid issues when he's older, but he is one of the best modern examples of what the human body is actually capable of. And just to absorb even a fifth of the information and the determination you hear when he talks about his stuff has done wonders for my own life, and I'd recommend it to everyone else.